and welcome to this week's edition of Retire Well, brought to you by the team of Citizen Advisory Group. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and I'm joined in the studio by the owner, Kevin Bucher, and financial advisor, Pete Samanok. We're so glad you're joining us today. This is a very important and powerful show. We're going to be talking about the unique retirement planning needs of women. We want to help empower more women to retire securely. So whether you yourself are a woman or you have a woman in your life who you love, you're definitely going to not want to miss today's show. Gosh, that was a tongue twister. But Kevin, Pete, great to be here with both of you.
Awesome. We're excited about this show. It's going to be a tricky one to navigate, but suggested by Kristen.
Yes.
So we're excited because you're excited about it.
Well, a really important show, I think.
It is,
yes,
for sure. And I think so many financial advisors out there, we know that this is a very male-dominated industry, tend to shy away from this conversation because they feel maybe a little uncomfortable about it. But I think this is one thing that really does set the team of Citizen Advisory Group apart. You really do empower a lot of women, not just your clients. And I know you work with a ton of female clients, but also I think of all the amazing women on your team. And of course, your wife, Heather, gets to work with the team. And then Jeff's wife, Sarah, is on the team as well. And so, you know, I think you have said that a lot of women have a completely different experience when they come in and meet with you. Why don't you let's just start with that. What makes your experience for them so different than what they've experienced previously?
Yeah. So we hear this story on a very common basis of whether you're a single female or you are part of a couple where you've gone in and met with an advisor and you're kind of dismissed in the conversation. You're not given the attention that the male participant is, even if you're the main financial decision maker in your household. So we just hear that story on a very, very regular basis, and I do think we provide a very different experience. With that, I think we are very purposeful in giving attention to both, if it's a couple, both individuals, to making sure that both of them are very familiar with the planning process that we're going through, and everybody is participating in that process.
Yeah, and I was having a conversation this week, even it's making me think about, with one of our coworkers, and she's a little bit new to the industry and just kind of getting her feet on the ground about, you know, what do we do as financial planners and what makes us different and special. And she was very surprised to learn. I tell you, the couples I work with, 50% of them are, usually one spouse or the other not dominates the financial planning, but usually takes the lead on it. And I would say it's 50-50. You know, it's half of the women and half of the men. So we're very deliberate about making it an all-encompassing approach and making sure that everyone's getting the same experience.
Yeah, no, it's so important. And you know, I'm the one that handles the finances in our family.
Yeah, see, right,
Big shocker, right? But it didn't used to be that way. And I think one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about what I do and how I got into this profession was way back in my mid-20s, I was single. And I knew that I wanted to learn about what to do to set myself up for success in retirement. I knew, even though I didn't have the knowledge or the education at the time, I was in a completely different field, that I wanted some help. And so a friend of mine said, oh, I have this friend whose husband's a financial advisor. You should meet with him. And I don't believe that this guy was a bad guy, but knowing what I know now, he worked for a big corporate firm, he was not independent, and he was not a fiduciary, right? So his options of how he could help me were very limited. But that on top of that, I went to that meeting, and when I left, I have never felt so humiliated and felt so stupid in my life. And I think a lot of women, unfortunately, have had that kind of experience where we want to get the help that we need. We are looking for the solid information, but we don't know who to trust. And then when we do meet with someone, often, unfortunately, we are patronized, talked down to. It's not a pleasant experience. And I really appreciate, I've been to your offices and you walk in the door and it's a completely different vibe, a completely different environment.
And I think that's what speaks to like how we operate as a business is we are very, I think this is industry standard, we're very down to earth people.
Yes, you are.
We're very family oriented and that's what shows, I think that's why we do well with that demographic, and our compassion and Kevin's compassion really shines through when meeting with people.
And I would add to that, I knew I wanted to make this point at somewhere in the show, so I might as well make it now. I think the financial planning process and the process that we go through with a household is suited very well for women.
Yes.
Because for the most part, I know every situation is different, but for the most part, we have found in our experience that women are more plan-oriented. Women are more planners than men. Men are more impulsive.
We like to ask for directions, right?
Yes.
And part of that in this analogy is getting the advice and the plan in place.
Yeah, so the process of financial planning is very well suited to the normal female situation out there because they are planners. They do want to have a plan, and they actually follow the plan. They're not as impulsive.
Right.
So we have found that some of our best clients are whether they're widows or singles or married,
right.
Where there's a heavy influence from the woman.
Yeah,
Yep.
no doubt.
Well, when I first got into this industry over a decade ago, I actually started off presenting just to female audiences. I was hired to travel nationwide and present a curriculum to women, solid financial education. And what was so rewarding for me was then I got to be part of the solution to a problem that had really brought me years of angst leading up to that point before I got into this industry and have the knowledge and am equipped how I am now. And so today's show, what we really want to do, because like it or not, women have to engage in more financial planning for men. There's some specific challenges that we as women face, and that's why we just wanted to have this open conversation about that today. So let's start with that. Why do women face some unique challenges? What are those unique challenges that we are encountering?
Yeah, and the one that sticks out to me the most off the top of my head is the survivorship issue, right? I mean, you guys were saying some stats and some numbers, is that it's shocking to me, but it's not surprising thinking back through our client base, is that 80% of women die single.
Yes,
right?
because we are outliving men on
Correct.
average 5 to 6 years.
And I would say, in my client, if I work with 100 widows or widowers, 95% of them seem to be women, and most of the single people that I work with are women just because of the survivorship issue.
Right.
Men don't live as long, we die a little bit earlier.
Yep.
So that's the most unique thing that stands out in my mind is the survivorship.
And that's a huge one. And I'd like to circle back to that, but there's a couple other things. I think that we find that women are more likely to have some time outside of the workforce.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So whether that was the starting of the family and maybe raising the kids or caring for an elderly parent, it is more likely that the female is more of the caregiver in those situations. So that sometimes they miss sometimes in the workforce. And there still is a little bit of wage inequality, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think the statistics show that women make 82 cents on the dollar for every male.
Yep, still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up straight, yes. Or maybe my face red, I don't know which way, right?
Has it changed since you did your financial education days? Is that number different than it was?
Is that number different? Well, this is a recent stat, is the 82 cents for every dollar that a man makes. It is a problem. We do have a gender pay gap. But to your point, Kevin, too, then you add into that the time that women are spending out of the workforce as the sandwich generation, time caring for kids, elderly parents, relatives, whatnot. That means less wages, less retirement account savings, and less Social Security.
Right,
so you're just getting hit on all these different angles.
Yes, and then one other I think unique characteristic that women have to face is, according to the National Institute of Health, women are a little more prone to suffer a long-term illness that requires ongoing assistance. So whether that's Alzheimer's or osteoporosis,
because we are living longer, right? So that means more chances for things to go wrong. Yeah,
and I'm glad you came back to that, because really what we're talking about, living long is a good thing and it should be celebrated.
Yes,
but that is what we call longevity risk. So there is a risk, the longer of your retirement that you have to support, that's longevity risk. You have a longer period of support. But longevity is a risk multiplier, because the longer you live, the more likely it is you have a long-term illness that requires assistance, whether in your home or in a facility. The more likely you see hyperinflation periods, the more likely you see market downturns. So all of those other risks are more prevalent the longer you live. And by statistics, women do live longer than men. So it's something that has to be part of the planning process.
For sure. Well, I know we have a lot more to get into on today's conversation of the unique retirement planning needs that women face. But this is why you all are offering your complimentary retirement checkpoint review. Explain how that specifically can address everything that you just talked about.
Yeah, so it's really important that you really take a step and assess where you're at this moment. across the areas of your financial plan. So the Retirement Checkpoint Review is going to do that. It's going to assess where you are from your investment management. How much risk are you taking? Are you comfortable with that risk? It's going to address what your income looks like in retirement. Are you saving enough? Do you have your income structured properly in retirement? What's your tax situation? What's your insurance situation? And then what's your legacy and estate plan? So the Retirement Checkpoint Review is going to address all 5 of those areas and really identify where are the action items that we need to address and start implementing some positive steps in that direction.
Wonderful. Kevin, Pete, thank you so much. And we are so excited to continue this conversation with all of you. But this is a great opportunity for you to reach out and get connected with the team of Citizen Advisory Group. This is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. It's simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how they might be able to help and serve you. We encourage you to reach out. You can connect in 2 ways. You can call the number on the bottom of your screen, which is 866-630-1675. Or if you'd prefer to connect online, if you simply pull out your smartphone, you can open up the camera app, just click and scan the QR code that you see there down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team from Citizen Advisory Group will reach out to connect with you to schedule your very own complimentary retirement checkpoint review. We'll be back with more on this conversation of the unique retirement planning needs for women right after this.
As a youth, I spent my summer months on the construction sites with my family. I think I learned early on the value of hard work. Ultimately, though, I was led into the financial services world where I joined my brother Jeff.
We were like many other financial advisors where, it was mainly transactional, but we felt there was just more. And I started to notice that the very, very wealthy families around the country had financial advisors that provided service to them that was really unparalleled. And it was always puzzling to us, well, why can't everyday hardworking people have that same opportunity?
I think we pride ourselves on the comprehensive services that we offer, which starts with the holistic financial planning. Our logo initially was a mountain-based theme, which was meant to kind of highlight the accumulation years where you're building and saving your resources for retirement, and then the backside of the mountain where you're working your way down in the distribution or income years.
I think many people think that the financial piece is just so prevalent and the most important component, but there's just more to it than that. It's about the experiences, it's about the relationships, it's about the life that our clients are living. As we looked in the future, we said, you know what, we need a logo that tells that story. It's our family coming together with your family. It's your financial pieces coming together to have a coordinated plan. It's our community coming together to keep that social connection. All of that coming together as one. And I think this logo beautifully illustrates we build all of this together to get the most out of your retirement so that you can have the retirement that you've always dreamt of.
Welcome back to Retire Well. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with both Kevin and Pete from Citizen Advisory Group. We're so glad you're here with us today, and we are talking specifically about the unique retirement planning needs that women face. So whether you yourself are a woman or you have a woman in your life who you love, you definitely want to continue to listen into this conversation, because as we set up at the beginning of the show, like it or not, there's some specific challenges that women face from a financial planning standpoint, and you and the entire team are passionate in making sure that women are able to retire securely. And I know we were also talking during the break, you work with a lot of married couples, you also work with a lot of single women, women who've been divorced, women who have been widowed, women who maybe never got married, right? And for each set of that, each group or each stage of that life, there's certain unique challenges, and I'd love for you to dive a little more deeply into something known as the widow's penalty, if you will, because I think that often impacts a lot of women.
Yeah, and I think specifically you might be talking about taxes in that instance, right? So yeah, a lot of times, when we're looking at tax planning, and when we differentiate ourselves in one of the 5 areas Kevin was just talking about, investment planning, insurance planning, estate planning, but then tax planning being on top of that. Why proactive tax planning is so important is a lot of times because of what we would call the widow's tax, is that when you're married and you have married filing joint tax rates, those tax rates are relatively favorable under today's laws. We're in a favorable tax environment. when we're married and there's two people in the household, okay? But
Right.
all of a sudden somebody passes away, and again, usually that's the male. Going back to just the statistics, and women typically survive the man,
Right.
is you're hit with the widow's tax. So now all of your tax brackets effectively shrink in half, okay? So you might be getting the same income, or I see a lot of times where people are actually, the surviving spouse is getting less income and paying more taxes. Okay, so let's think about that again. The surviving spouse is getting maybe less income, 30 to
Right.
40% less income,
Yep.
and they're paying more tax.
Right. It's so cruel, right?
And people
On top
might
of
think
everything.
about,
Yeah.
how can that be? I'm getting less income and I'm paying more taxes than I was when I was married. And that's why the importance of true proactive tax planning is so important, because of that widow's tax.
Yes, for sure. And there's also the double whammy of, especially if you were married and you were receiving 2 Social Security checks, well, if the husband passes away, you're going to lose one of the 2 Social Security checks. Well, the good news is you get to keep the higher of the 2 checks, but this also emphasizes the importance of engaging in Social Security planning.
Yeah, and I would say one of the most impactful pieces that we put together as part of the Retirement Checkpoint Review is the retirement income plan, and it is a projection out over 25 to 30 years of your retirement life, and it's going to highlight where are you drawing your income from: Social Security, possibly a pension, and then your investment portfolio. And one of the things that we always are going to illustrate on there,
Yep.
on paper,
Yep.
is the impact of losing that first spouse, right? So it's a projection of
Right.
what's going to be the household income when the first of you passes. And you're right, there's only going to be one Social Security benefit coming in as opposed to the 2 when you were both living. So to Pete's point, that usually leads to a lower income to the survivor, but without proper planning, you might be paying more taxes on that less income,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
first, we need to understand what that survivor income looks like so that we can properly plan around decisions around Social Security, pensions, and life insurance to make sure that that survivor is going to be adequately protected.
Yes.
Yeah, and sometimes that gives purpose. As you're saying that, it's making me think to what is the purpose of the actual assets you have, right? I mean, we're talking about our pensions and Social Securities and all these different things, but what is the purpose of the other dollars you have, the 401ks, the retirement savings you have set aside? And sometimes that's to provide some flexibility for the possibility of survivorship risk, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that gives some purpose and some meaning to what are we actually doing with those dollars.
Yeah. Well, and we know that typically in a married couple, usually one person versus the other tends to handle the finances, right? And in your household, it could be the male. In your household, it could be the female, right? I know that's the case in my household. But regardless, it's so important for both spouses to know what the plan is and to know, like you said, those projections. It's never fun to think about. But when you're left grieving, that is not the time on top of everything else that you want to wade through a nightmare or a mess that's been dumped in your lap, or to try to figure out if that plan is going to work.
Yeah,
This is so crucial to have a plan on the front
Yeah,
end.
and I'll just comment quickly on my own personal situation. People find this surprising. I don't do the day-to-day finances in my household, the bills, the things like that. I don't really take a lot of interest in it, the budgeting and things like that. My
You're
wife
too
has-
busy doing that for
she
everybody
does a
else,
tremendous
right?
job of that, and there's a
Yeah.
part of that. But who does the retirement planning and kind of the long-term things? Well, obviously that's me.
Right.
But it was making me think of my own household. Kevin and I were talking about this.
Yeah.
As we're putting the show together and thinking through these things, it made me think of my own household. Is how comfortable is my spouse with the actual retirement plan we have? Obviously, I know what it is
Right.
and how it's going to map out, but I think it just encourages that no matter what your situation is and who's kind of doing the majority of that, is to be more involved in the finances,
Yes.
right? Make an effort to be interested and involved, because it impacts you so much.
For sure.
Well, and what I would add to that, as you know, Kristen, a lot of advisors do not engage in the topics of Social Security and taxes, Medicare. I mean, there's a handful of things that advisors usually hold off at arm's length, and these are things that we can't hold off at arm's length because they make such a big difference to the overall plan.
Yep.
So Social Security planning, we need both parties to be present and understand what that looks like, not just while you're both living, but what's the impact when the first of you passes. Because the decisions you make affect what that's going to look like.
Yep.
Same on pensions.
Yes.
So we really need both parties to be present. That doesn't matter whether it's the male or female who's
Sure.
running the show
Right.
financially.
Yeah. Yep.
Both people need to understand that at the high level.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious if someone's watching and going, gosh, I would love to be able to get on the same page with my spouse, whether you're a man or a woman, and make sure that the plan is in place for yourself, what would you say to someone watching who's like, could you help us get on the same page? I mean, what would that look like if they were to come in and meet with you all?
Yeah, I think it's actually a pretty simple process, and it might sound a little redundant. The solution is pick up the phone, schedule your complimentary retirement checkpoint review. We will assess where you are at and walk you through these 5 stages, and we will meet you where you're at, right? We understand that life happens and everybody comes through our doors and they're in a different place financially with their plan. We're gonna meet you where you're at, and we're gonna help get you on the right path to secure a better future for you. So we'll walk you through all 5 areas of investments, income, taxes, insurance, and legacy and estate planning, but it really starts with that one simple step. Pick up the phone, let us help you along this journey and get you on a better track.
Kevin, Pete, thank you so much. That number to call to start your own journey is there on the bottom of your screen, 866-630-1675, or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We know that a lot of this might be new to you. We know that it can feel overwhelming when you are starting this retirement planning journey. You just have to reach out and call to schedule your time to come in and receive that complimentary retirement checkpoint. We'll be back with more right after this.
We know the market is going to get worse from here. This is the biggest monthly decline in 10 years. People's 401ks took a major hit.
Well, my investments are tanking. My retirement isn't going as planned. I can't believe I let my kid talk me into buying crypto. I mean, what is that anyway?
This was the 4th worst contraction in history.
So how are you two doing?
I'm Jeff Bucher of Citizen Advisor Group, and if you've amassed a nest egg, it's time for a financial advisor to help you reach your retirement goals. This is one of the greatest tax windows in history. Now is the time to take advantage of this tax discount while you can. We specialize in retirement planning, tax mitigation, legacy planning, and so much more. Plan your retirement right. Call now for your own complimentary retirement review and tax analysis.
Imagine not having to face your retirement with the same old corporate solutions as everyone else. In these economic times, you deserve a fresh perspective that includes a personalized retirement income plan, investment portfolio analysis, and tax map from an independent fiduciary advisor whose focus is on you. Call the number you see here to schedule your complimentary review right now.
Welcome back to Retire Well, where today we are discussing the unique retirement planning needs that women face. If you're just tuning in and joining us, you guys have done such a great job of setting up why women have to engage specifically in more financial planning than men. There's things like the fact that we're living longer than most men do. We also have to make sure that we have enough in place to last for the rest of our lives, to cover potential health care costs. My gosh, there's just a lot that goes into this. I think the best way to kind of sum up everything we've been talking about is through stories, and I would love for you to share an example of a woman that you've been able to specifically help with a lot of what we've been talking about today.
Yeah, and I have one that just comes to mind, a gal that I've worked with for several years now. And I think like a lot of people, both male and female, there's a lot of anxiety that comes along with the retirement process and making sure that you're going to be taken care of for the rest of your life. But I think it might be even a little more pronounced with females. And I have found that leaving the workforce is something that is really hard for them because there's a lot of fear.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So this individual was, that describes her very well. She had a lot of anxiety. She actually had done a pretty good job of saving for retirement, and she really had plenty of resources to support her lifestyle. Just had to be structured properly, right?
Yep.
So we walked through this retirement checkpoint review. We addressed the risk level of her investment portfolio. She was taking on a little more risk than she was comfortable with, so we were able to adjust some things in her portfolio. That made her feel more comfortable, that she wasn't exposed to so much risk and potential loss.
Right.
Maybe more importantly, though, we were able to kind of structure a retirement income plan for her that not only was going to meet her needs for the first year of retirement, but it was structured in a way that had some guarantees behind it. And she felt comfortable that those guarantees were going to be enough to support her basic lifestyle. We addressed some of that long-term care risk that women face. And so we were able to get a small policy in place to help protect against that and make sure she was going to be cared for. So really it's just addressing all these things, and it's not usually a big, huge leap that has to be taken. It's just a series of small steps. And for her, that really helped alleviate a lot of that anxiety. And she really is in a much more comfortable place with her finances at this point. And that allows you to go out and live and enjoy your retirement. And that's what our job is all about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you've also helped a lot of women who have been blindsided by divorce rebuild their lives. Anything come to mind that you want to share about?
Yeah, and again, I think that kind of emphasizes the point. And I'm talking to women, men, both people in a married couple, is that we really want to encourage you to both be very involved and be aware of the decisions that are being made that directly impact you. You know, and I've had some tough meetings. I can think of one just this past week. It was a first consultation, and I had met them through some other clients of mine, and I was going through like their retirement planning and what they were planning on doing. And people have risks and challenges that they're not even aware of. So, you know, he was planning on taking the very most he could get from his pension, which is the single life option, right? So he could start getting that pension, and maybe that's $5,000 a month.
Right.
Well, yeah, $5,000 a month is more than $4,500 a month, because sometimes you have to take a reduction in what you're possibly getting to help cover your spouse in case of a survivorship issue. But when I laid it out and showed him, look, if we do that, and then he passes away unexpectedly within the first 2 years, 5 years, I don't care, 10 years,
right,
and she has 20 more years to live, that's a very impactful thing that, again, people have to be involved in the finances.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know that we've covered a lot of ground. I could spend all day talking about this with you guys. It's something I'm clearly passionate about. I know you are too. But I think another thing that really is important for people to understand about Citizen Advisory Group is how much you empower women, not just your clients, but your team. You have a lot of women who work on the team and who are a part of involved in the financial planning process. And also your Retire Well program, I think, is something that really benefits a lot of women as well.
Yeah, and I think that's all of that is something we could highlight. But let me just spend a moment talking about the Retire Well program. And it's not intended to just be for a woman's program. It's intended to be for all retirees, because we truly believe that a successful retirement has to be built around strong financial stability, health and wellness initiatives, and social connection. So our Retirement Well program is built to promote those three pillars of a successful retirement. And just because a lot of women do outlive men, we get a tremendous amount of participation in the social component of our Retire Well program. So I think our female clients get just a lot of value.
And we're doing a lot of specific events just for single women, and that's
awesome.
Props to Sarah and her team that does the Retire Well program.
And providing that added benefit of community.
Just to have people that we can talk to that are going through the same things as us, it's important.
That's awesome. Guys, thank you so much. We encourage you to reach out and get your very own complimentary retirement checkpoint review. You can do so by calling the number you see on the bottom of your screen. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on Retire Well.